Good evening, everyone. As you can see from the title and the thumbnail, the death and resurrection of Lazarus proves that no one goes to heaven. Now, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like what I'm saying. But please listen to the great teacher, Jesus Christ. One of the biggest errors, deceptions, and lies that has been and still is being perpetrated upon the human family is that people go to heaven. The great teacher Jesus taught at John chapter 3 verse 13 that no one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven. Did you or I or anyone else, any human being, come from heaven? No, we came up from the earth. One cannot ignore what Jesus said at John chapter 3 verse 13 unless they want to. But that in itself shows that no one goes to heaven. No one. In Acts chapter 2 verse 34, we're told that even King David did not ascend into heaven. So this is in full alignment with what Jesus taught at John chapter 3 verse 13. Jesus also taught in the Lord's Prayer at Matthew chapter 6 verse 10, your kingdom come. Your kingdom, God's kingdom, the Father's kingdom, come where? Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus also taught at Matthew chapter 5 verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. If the earth itself is blown up, as Christianity tends to lean towards, and everything is just wiped away, gone, who's going to be here on earth to inherit it? So this shows that the earth itself is not going anywhere. Worlds will be destroyed. Worlds in that the things that we plant on top of God's perfect earth. There is nothing wrong with the earth itself. God is perfect. He created a perfect heaven and he created a perfect earth. Now what we put on it, like back in Noah's day, you know, the world of Noah's day, or the world of Sodom and Gomorrah, and this world today, those are the things that go away. But when they're gone, the earth itself remains. And here's a scripture you can look up for yourself. If one goes to Revelation chapter 21, beginning at verse 1 and 2, the Apostle John, under inspiration, writes this, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. This is all still yet future. And there was no longer any sea. Now, this is not a literal sea. This is the sea of mankind, the restless sea of mankind. Then John goes on to say, and I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem. Now check this part out. Coming down out of heaven from who? From God. Prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. This is in full alignment with what Jesus taught in the Lord's Prayer at Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. Your kingdom come, your will take place on earth as it is in heaven. So if God's kingdom is coming down to the earth one day in the future, what need is there for anyone to go up to heaven? As Jesus taught at John chapter 3 verse 13, no one has ever ascended into heaven except the one who came down from heaven. Now let's talk about the death and resurrection of Jesus' friend Lazarus. And you can find this at John chapter 11, beginning at verse 1 down through verse 44. And I'm going to read this in its entirety. It is very important that you understand this because you will find in it proof, and I've already given the scriptural substantiation, but the death and resurrection of Lazarus is proof that no one goes to heaven. Now, beginning at John chapter 11, let's start at verse 1. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. So Jesus loved his friend Lazarus. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So in this context, when Jesus said falling asleep, he's referring to falling asleep in death. Please understand this, that when Jesus said that Lazarus had fallen asleep, his disciples misunderstood him and thought he meant that he had fallen asleep in a natural sleep state. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. Let us go to him." So Jesus is setting his disciples up to witness something incredibly wonderful: the resurrection of a dead man back to life. Then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Understand this as well. If Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, his body would have begun to decay and stink. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." This statement is incredibly powerful for all of us. All who die will rise again, that is, be resurrected from the dead back to life again. Many have no idea of the importance of that. Christianity is teaching some type of escapism thing, that when you die, you're going to one of 2 places. You're going to heaven, or you're going to their made-up hell. Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." So even Martha, his sister, understood the resurrection hope. Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die." Do you believe this? Here at verse 25 and verse 26, Jesus says something very profound here. He's referring to a group of people who will be resurrected back to life again. But yet ahead of them is the prospect of dying again. That is a second death. This is mentioned at Revelation chapter 20, verse 14. And in a few other places in Revelation. But he's also talking about another group of people, because he goes on to say, "And whoever lives by believing in me will never die." That is, when they're resurrected, the lake of fire, which is the second death, has no power over them. They're granted immortality. This is very profound, and I've done videos on this. Many today, yes, I'm referring to you Christians, still don't get it. At John chapter 5, verse 28 and 29, Jesus promised a resurrection for all, those who believe in him and those who do not. How can persons who lived in times before Jesus know him? How can persons who lived during the time period in which he lived, that is his contemporaries, but they lived in different parts of the world and never heard of him, more or less knew of his teachings. And they had died. Are they forgotten? No. Jesus died for all of mankind. Everyone, the good and the bad, will have a resurrection. I don't care who they are. They will have a resurrection. It's not up to you and me to pick and choose who will and who will not have a resurrection. Jesus is very clear at John chapter 5, verse 28 and 29. He says there, "Do not marvel at this, or a time is coming when all, A-L-L, in their graves, if you're in your grave, you're dead. All in their graves will hear his voice and come out." That includes Adam. When Adam disobeyed God, his sentence was death, not eternal torment. So Adam will also have a resurrection thanks to the sacrificial death of Jesus Christ. That is a free gift for all of mankind. There aren't any conditions placed upon that. Now, what happens after the resurrection is another story. Let's pick up at verse 28. After she had said this, that's Martha, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and he's asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he's been there for 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." God sent Jesus. Verse 43. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Stop and think. Jesus resurrected Lazarus, his friend, one whom he loved, from the dead. Lazarus was dead for 4 days. When he was resurrected, did Lazarus report that he was in heaven? Did he report that he was in some other place that Christianity has made up? No. Lazarus did not report being in heaven. He did not report being in that other place that Christianity calls hell. That is their hell. And why is that? Because the dead know nothing at all. The dead are unaware. They're in a deep sleep. So during that time, during those 4 days that he was dead, Lazarus was inactive. He wasn't breathing. His brain wasn't functioning. His eyes were not seeing. His ears were not hearing. He was dead. And this is in full alignment with what The wise King Solomon said at Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5 and verse 10. Let's read that. At Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5, we read this. For the living know. See, those of us who are alive, we are knowledgeable of things. We are aware of things. So King Solomon here first speaks about those who are living. He says, for the living know that they will die. That is true. Now he contrasts the dead with the living. But the dead know nothing. So when Lazarus was dead, he knew nothing. He was dead. They, that is the dead, have no further reward. Even their name is forgotten. If you drop down to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10, King Solomon writes this. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you're going, we're all going there, no one will be able to escape death. No one will have an experience different from Jesus. If Jesus died, so will we. If he was resurrected from the dead, so will we. Think about that. Anyone who believes, or any system of religion that teaches that you're not going to die, are saying that they will have an experience different from Jesus. If that's the case, then they're not following Jesus. Following Jesus is just not a matter of just saying his name, or saying I believe in the Bible, or saying that I believe in his teachings. No, it's much more than that. One follows him into death and even suffering, and one follows him out of the grave as well. But again, here at Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you're going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. The dead are unaware. So when Lazarus died, he was inactive. He was switched off, so to speak. He was dead for those 4 days. So Lazarus could not report saying that he was in heaven, or he was in some other place, or he was someplace else. He was dead. So when Christianity in general teaches that when one dies, that dead loved ones, or anyone who dies, go to heaven, that is not in alignment with what Jesus taught. And it is certainly not in alignment with this story about Lazarus. I'm not asking for agreement with this. But what I am saying, you have to reconcile this. You just can't say that if you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, or that if you're a Christian, you're going to heaven. How do you reconcile what Jesus taught at John chapter 3, verse 13, that no one has ever ascended into heaven? How do you reconcile the death and resurrection of Lazarus? He did not report being anywhere when Jesus resurrected him from the dead. All who have died since the creation of the first man, Adam, are still in the earth to this very day, awaiting the great resurrection yet to occur in the future. So the death and resurrection of Lazarus is proof that no one goes to heaven.